Quickly, just to update our viewers, that I just saw a tweet from the Prefecture of Police in Paris. They are saying that the situation currently in front of Notre Dame has now been neutralized. A wounded policeman, so there is a policeman who was wounded. The assailant was shot by police and is headed to a hospital. And they are calling it right now a controlled situation. This is in French, obviously. Situation maîtrisée, meaning that they are now in control of the situation at Notre Dame Cathedral. I don't know if that means that people are now free to move about freely, but it is, according to the police, it's a tweet that just came across my phone in the last 10 seconds or so, that they appear to have the situation under control. Mikey, I didn't mean to interrupt your very important point there, but I just wanted to bring that bit of news to our viewers.
But we did hear from Elaine that at least the division of police that looks into terrorism is looking into this incident here. So yeah, Mikey, you're giving us some really important context beyond today and even beyond this year. So I know we keep sort of cutting into you there, but let's head back to that there was a call put out to encourage those who are dedicated to the mission, the Islamic State mission, to encourage them to act out during this time.
Yeah, this was last year. So this was by the Islamic State spokesman. It was a man called Al-Adnani, who wasn't just the Islamic State spokesman, a very powerful, very significant man inside the organization. Some say he was number 2 to al-Baghdadi, who was the caliph. But he was also thought to be the head of external operations. So he was the man that was responsible for basically galvanizing those with the ideology, the sympathizers, those people that were trying to fight for the Islamic State. He was the man that was responsible for galvanizing those people, whether it's on the left of Arc, from lone wolves all the way to the right of Arc to very sophisticated terror cells. He was the man that was responsible for galvanizing them into making any form of attack that they could. And basically he said, you know, you didn't just have to have a rifle, you could use anything. You could use a vehicle, you could use a van, you could use a knife. And so it was really weaponizing anything, any normal day objects that could be used to lethal effect. And we saw a truck being used to a lethal effect in Nice. We've seen cars on London Bridge being used to lethal effect. So he was responsible for that. Now, what's really important is that at the end of last year, he was actually neutralized by an airstrike in Aleppo province. And the Pentagon and the coalition, CJTF OIR, which is Operation Inherent Resolve, the spokespeople in the Pentagon and the US were very very upbeat and very positive about how this was going to be a huge setback for the Islamic State, not just in terms of morale inside Syria and Iraq, but also the ability for the Islamic State to strike fear and terror into the West. And I think what's interesting is that since the end of last year, we had increasingly more success in Mosul. Mosul is about 95% liberated now, which is the Islamic State stronghold inside northern Iraq. We heard today that the SDF and the Syrian Arab coalition partners are about to make a move on Raqqa, which is the self-proclaimed Islamic State capital in northern Syria. But the big question for me is, even with al-Adnani gone, the Islamic State still have this ability to commit pretty horrendous attacks, not just in Manchester, not just in London, not just in France, but also significant attacks inside Baghdad and the wider sort of Middle East region. So I think that is certainly something when it comes to the strategy and the approach that the West is taking, the military approach, the military application. The attacks still keep coming, and there's definitely an argument to say, well, what are we missing here? What are the intelligence agencies missing? You know, it's a multi-layered approach. It's a holistic approach, and it won't be resolved, as Theresa May merely said, you know, very recently. It won't be solved by military application alone.
Right. You know, the conversation is always, how do you stop an ideology? Do you can't shut down borders and stop an ideology. You can't, you know, no matter how many planes or bombs you have, how do you stop that ideology? And I want to talk to you, Elaine, because you've been in Paris for a while. This is one of the challenges that they're facing here in Paris. There are, you know, this conversation comes up over and over again about young men and women feeling like they cannot be French, that it's difficult when you come from another country, when there's another culture, another religion, to feel like you are officially a French person. And I'm wondering if there has been in Paris, Elaine, any outreach, any conversation about how can we bridge the gap there. And I want to say that that as I'm presenting this question, we still don't know what's going on here. And this could just be sort of random crime in the city. But Elaine, has there been any outreach?
There has. There are regular contacts between the leaders of the Muslim communities, particularly in the bigger cities like in Paris and Marseille and Lyon, and talking about how to preach peace and inclusion to young people. And France has also been very tough in the last few years on imams who've been found guilty of spreading hate speech. And they've deported several. They just say it's a zero tolerance of preachers who are pushing the young people here to hatred or to acts of hatred. But let's not forget the presidential elections just recently in April and May also brought up a well of that kind of feeling again, because National Front leader Marine Le Pen, who has appealed to the older immigrant classes, was also talking a lot about how she is not against Islam, but against violent Islam. And there was an awful lot of debate about it again. And it's certainly, a lot of people felt that she was giving permission to people to be Islamophobic and for young Muslims to be openly angry. And there was a lot of division that came up again. And so a lot of raw emotions were exposed during that time.
And one of the things, Elaine, and it's something that Anne-Marie has been talking about, and we've been talking about, and again, if you're just joining us, if our viewers are just joining us here on CBSN, we're following developments in Paris, France, at Notre Dame Cathedral. Reports from the police. A man with a hammer attacked a police officer. That attacker was wounded, as was the police officer that was attacked. The assailant has been taken to a hospital. The French police tweeting out just moments ago that the situation is currently, in their words, under control. But as our CBS News reporter Elaine Cobb has pointed out, this investigation has now been turned over to the anti-terror squad, the anti-terror law enforcement officials, to continue the investigation. And as we start to see, don't want to get too metaphorical here, the sun is starting to shine again after a period of rain. A lot of us here, and certainly in France, Elaine, are probably breathing a sigh of relief that somebody was not killed in this incident, even as police at this point are not saying that it is a terror attack, although it has been turned over to the anti-terror authorities.